Mountains, a memoir by Ruskin Bond. It was while I was living in England, in the jostle and bristle of London, that I remembered the Himalayas at their most vivid. I had grown up amongst those great blue and brown mountains. They had nourished my blood, and though I was separated from them by thousands of miles of ocean, plain, and desert, I could not forget them. It is always the same with mountains. Once you have lived with them for any length of time, you belong to them. There is no escape. And so in London in March, the fog became a mountain mist, and the boom of traffic became the boom of the Ganges emerging from the foothills. I remembered a little mountain path which led my restless feet into a cool, sweet forest of oak and rhododendron, and then on to the wind-swept crest of a naked hilltop. The hill was called Cloud's End. It commanded a view of the plains on one side and of the snow peaks on the other. Little silver rivers twisted across the valley below, where the rice fields formed a patchwork of emerald green, and on the hill itself the wind made a hoo 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 in the branches of the tall deodars, where it found itself trapped. During the rains, clouds enveloped the valley but left the hills alone, an island in the sky. Wild sorrel grew among the rocks, and there were many flowers: convolvulus, clover, wild begonia, dandelion, sprinkling the hillside. On a spur of the hill stood the ruins of an old building, the roof of which had long since disappeared, and the rain had beaten the stone floor smooth and yellow. Moss and ferns and maidenhair grew from the walls. In a hollow beneath a flight of worn stone step, a wild cat made his home. It was a beautiful grey creature, black striped with pale red eyes. Sometimes it watched me from the steps or the wall, or it never came near. No one lived on the hill, except occasionally a coal burner in a temporary grass-thatched hut. But villagers used the path for grazing their sheep and cattle on the grassy slopes. Each cow or sheep had a bell suspended from its neck to let the shepherd boy know its whereabouts. The boy could then lie in the sun and eat wild strawberries without fear of losing his animals. I remembered some of the shepherd boys and girls. There was a boy who played the flute. Its rough, sweet, straightforward notes travelled clearly through the mountain air. He would greet me with a nod of his head without taking the flute from his lips. There was a girl who was nearly always cutting grass for fodder. She wore heavy bangles on her feet and long silver earrings. She did not speak much either, but she always had a wide smile on her face when she met me on the path. She used to sing to herself, or to the sheep, or to the grass, or to the sickle in her hand. And there was a boy who carried milk into town, a distance of about 5 miles, who would often fall into step with me to hold a long conversation. He had never been away from the hills or in a large city. He had never been on a train. I told him about the cities, and he told me about his village, how they made bread from maize, how fish were to be caught in the mountain streams, how the bears came to steal their father's pumpkins. Whenever the pumpkins were ripe, he told me the bears would come and carry them off. These things I remembered, these and the smell of the pine needles, the silver of oak leaves and the red of maple, the call of the Himalayan cuckoo, and the mist, like a wet face cloth, pressing against the hills. Odd how some little incident, some snatch of conversation comes back to one again and again in the most unlikely places. Standing in the aisle of a crowded tube train on a Monday morning, my nose tucked into the back page of someone else's newspaper, I suddenly had a vision of a bear making off with a ripe pumpkin. a beer and a pumpkin, and there between Belsize Park and the Tottenham Court Road station, all the smells of the sound of the Himalayas came rushing back to me. Mountains. Once you have lived with mountains, you belong to them. Now, let me tell you some interesting facts about mountains. We all know that Mount Everest is Earth's highest mountain above sea level, and it is located in the sub range of Himalayas. The China Nepal border runs across its summit point. There are many mountains, but today we will talk about the tall mountains that are situated in different continents. These mountains are called seven summits, means seven highest or tallest mountains of the seven continents of our planet. So the first mountain is Mount Everest, the tallest among all the mountains, and is situated in our continent, that is Asia. The second is Cerro Aconcagua, the mountain. It is situated in South America. The third one is Denali. It is situated in North America. The fourth one is Kilimanjaro, which is situated in Africa. The fifth is Elbrus. It is situated in Europe. The sixth mountain is Mount Vinson Massif. It is situated in Antarctica. And the seventh mountain is Carsten's Pyramid, which is in Australia. Human beings have always tried to achieve the impossible, and that makes us special as a living being. Many people tried to climb these mountains since long. Climbing these tall mountains are really tough and are regarded as a mountaineering challenge, which was first achieved on 30th April 1985 by Richard Bass, who was an American businessman and a mountaineer too, who climbed all these seven tallest mountains, which together we known as seven summits. By 1992, Junko Tabei, a Japanese mountaineer who was also a teacher and an author, became the first woman to ascend the seven summits. But way back in the year 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay was the first person to climb the Mount Everest, which is the highest mountain. In the year 1965, Avtar Singh Chima was the first Indian man and the 16th person in the world to climb Mount Everest. Along with other 8 people, he was a part of the third mission undertaken by the Indian Army to climb Mount Everest after 2 failed attempts. In 1984, Bachendri Pal became the first Indian woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest. There are many men and women who undertake this challenge of ascending these tall mountains every year, some as a hobby or some as a passion, but definitely for the love of mountains.